Uh, these are short chapters. So as far as your writing style, let's break it down. How long does a book like this take you to write?
Depends how much I'm focusing on it and how much I'm doing other stuff. Like, I think if I just sat down and actually wrote it, I could do it in a few months, but that's never how I do it. It usually takes me like at least a year. Not because it's so much text, but just because, like, I'll write for a few days and then I'll think about it for a month. So probably longer than it needs to, but I think even the month that I spend thinking about it and not typing is like part of the process.
Fair enough. I mean, it must be. It's producing quality work.
Yeah, thanks.
Do you have some hard and fast rules as far as the chapter lengths seem pretty, not uniform, but pretty consistent as far as how long they were and where they're ending? Do you have some hard and fast rules about chapters? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I tend to, in my middle grades, the chapters tend to be a bit shorter. I tend to aim for like around 5 pages, or maybe roughly 1,000 to 1,500 words per chapter. Sometimes it's longer than that or shorter than that, and that's fine. If it's tons longer than that, then I'm like, okay, it seems like a sign that I should split this into 2 chapters, and then I do. I think a chapter ending, every chapter should have something in it that is going to propel you forward to the next chapter. So some sort of unanswered question that we need to read the next chapter in order to find out the answer, or some kind of promise about like an interesting scene that's to come, of like, oh, she was really dreading her run-in with her Aunt Helen the next day. So you're like, oh, I want to find out why she's dreading it, and what's Aunt Helen's deal. So like I'll turn the page on the assumption that the next chapter is going to give that to me. So I think not every chapter needs to end on a cliffhanger. It just needs to give you a reason to turn the page again.
Well, if a cliffhanger is not available, which is one thing I miss about writing zombie books, I got to write another one because there's always somebody getting chased by a zombie. So cliffhangers are great.
Yeah.
But when you don't have the great advantage of zombies or a cliffhanger, what are good notes to end on that are going to keep that reader propelled forward?
I mean, sometimes I think you can end on like a moment of peace and kind of like, I want to see here like how, the first chapter ends. We've just introduced this conflict of kids at school kind of ostracizing her, and it ends on the sentence, and somehow I'm the weird one. That doesn't make sense out of context. I don't know. That one just sort of ends with like a wry observation. And then the next one ends with a really obvious question. She finds out in chapter 2 about this woman who's going to become mayor and get rid of arts. And so we end with the sentence, without art, what was I going to do? So that brings you very clearly in the next chapter of like, okay, she's going to tell us what she's going to do. So let's find out what it is. Chapter 3 ends, the babysitter is saying, like, here's something we could try. Maddie's like, are you sure? Because I'm pretty sure this woman's just evil. The babysitter says, I have no idea, but there's only one way to find out. So we're like, okay, I guess in the next chapter we're going to find out what the one way to find out is. So, yeah, like that.
So it seemed like the end on multiple character points with insights into Maddie. So that if the cliffhanger is not available, I felt like you were investing us. Not just Maddie. We're also invested in Janet. We're also invested in my friend. Is it Kevin?
My friend Daniel.
My friend Daniel. I couldn't remember. I love that name though. So in the Molly, Holly, and Polly. Just great names throughout. But I felt like character was something that got hit again and again to keep us focused on Maddie. We're never seeing anything that's not in some way filtered through Maddie's perspective. Is that right?
Yeah, well, it's first person. So I think you would do the same even if it was third person. Like, she's the main character, so her perspective is the only one really that matters. But yeah, definitely. Because I think any book should be about, or any novel should be about the main character's arc, right? Like their internal journey. So if they start out thinking or believing something that, like, even if there are other characters in the story saying like, that's not true or that's not consequential or whatever it is, like, the process of the story has to be them coming to understand that for themselves. It can't just be, again, like some grown-up who knows everything telling them on page 2, like, oh, the thing you're worried about is silly, or here's the solution, or whatever it is, because then, like, they're not going through that growth on their own.